All right, it is 5:30, and I will call the July school board meeting to order. If you guys would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. First off, on the agenda, we need to add an addendum, letter D, the laptop fee and changes. Do I have a motion and a second to approve letter D addendum?
Make a motion to add letter D to our addendum.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? D is added. And also letter E, resolution to grant additional sick leave for COVID-19 pandemic. Need a motion?
Motion made.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Letter E is passed. Recognition of guests. No guests tonight. We're moving on to letter I. Number one, need a motion and a second to approve the June 18 regular meeting. Need a motion?
made.
Second?
Motion second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Number two, June 29th special meeting. Motion and a second to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Number three, July 9th work session. Need a motion and a second.
Make the motion.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Monthly financial report. Mr. Jarnett.
On the financial report tonight, I wanted to just give you a reminder that when you look at our expenditures for the month of June, that we had our double payroll for June. Teachers do not get a check in July, they get two in June instead, so that explains that. I also wanted to point out to you that these numbers for June will be adjusted as we go through the audit process and close out the books on the fiscal year that ended June 30th of 2020. A couple pieces of good news for you to share with you. We are receiving a $9,500 credit for our auto vehicle insurance for the school buses that were not driven during the NTI days in the spring. And our agent has told us that they may revisit that if we have NTI days again to a large extent during the upcoming school year. We are also going to receive a refund of our premiums for bus drivers and monitors for the NTI days back in the spring where we did not do the meal delivery. So when we switched to meal delivery on 3 days a week, the 2 days a week that those employees were contracted for will have a reduction of those premiums. Our bus drivers and transportation employees have the highest rate for workers' comp. So that will be a good refund for us, and I don't know the amount yet. One other piece of good news that will help us for the upcoming school year is we have a refund from KSBA for our unemployment premiums that we've paid in this school year. This is pretty common at the end of each year. We'll usually get a refund of anywhere between $50,000 and $60,000. This one is $63,480. It's a surplus balance for the calendar year 2019. Now, I think that we will not be able to anticipate a refund like that moving forward because we've had so many unemployment claims from people out of work during the pandemic. So hopefully we can just set that aside and use that to help pay additional premiums for 2020 and beyond, however long the pandemic lasts. Do you have any questions on the financial report?
Thank you, Mr. Jarnett.
Okay, thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve the monthly financial report?
I make a motion that we approve it.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Monthly financial is passed. Recognition of personnel files. Mr. Carter has asked that that be entered into the agenda. No board action needs to be taken. Other reports. Mr. Carter, where we're gonna start tonight?
We'll go ahead and just start with instruction. Attendance-wise, I would say, Mr. Boland, I don't think you have anything to add other than we're going to be operating on 18-19 data moving forward. So that's one of the waivers that we have kind of, or guidance that we've received from KDE. So as far as right now, we have no additional information on attendance.
Mr. Slinsky, yes, sir.
Sure. Just wanted to brief you on technology, to let you know that as of yesterday, several of us moved in a little over 2,000 laptops into the high school. So all of our laptops have been delivered. High school, middle school, and all of our elementary schools have been delivered. And they're being unpackaged, put in the carts, starting to charge, and probably somewhere around 4,000 laptops that have been brought into the district. So it's quite a few. Phase 2 is to take the current 500 that we have at McCracken County High School that were left by the exiting seniors, and we're going through cleaning and sanitizing those, getting ready to distribute those to our elementary schools, and then as our soon-to-be sophomores, 10, 11, and 12 come back to school, we'll take the new laptops that we have and replace them with the current ones that they have, and we'll do the same. We'll clean, sanitize, make sure they're working properly, and again, distribute those down to the elementary schools so that everybody is in really good shape, technology-wise and device-wise. So that's just an update for where we were a week ago. We were starting to have some deliveries, and we're a little unsure about when the next ones were here, but they came, and we've got them. And sort of proud, I think we've beat some districts. Some districts are waiting for their deliveries, and it may be into the mid-fall, late fall before they get theirs. So we're in good shape. Any questions that you guys might have for me for that? I want to show you something that Jamie's put together. So obviously tonight you guys are going to be looking, and based off of last week, our entry plan returning back to school. This is a beta version of what would be on the website, so that, you know, as you're fielding questions out in the community, this is a tool for your tool belt you could refer them back to if you wanted to do that. So she's developed this, and I just wanted to show you a couple things. That these are all links that if folks have questions about the school calendar, there would be the proposed school calendar. I hope that's showing. Start and end times. Those would be on there as well, so that folks, you could have that as a resource. What are the school plans? This would talk about Plan A. You could click on Plan A and see some of the details about Plan A. Plan B, Plan C being virtual. Resources there for the parents. One of the things that we are still currently working on would be FAQs, the frequently asked questions. And so those have a little bit been all over the place, and we're trying to really consolidate those because questions are asked multiple ways, and you might have 10 of the same question, but it's been asked sort of differently. So we're gathering those. Hopefully those are going to be live when this goes live tomorrow, Monday, because the idea would be to start contacting parents to find out their choices for in-school or virtual type setting. And they need some of these frequently asked questions to help make that decision. So I just wanted to show you that this is sort of setting on go, and this can go live, and our community can use this as a resource. And, you know, you can help direct them to that if need be. So it's a really, really nice site. Yes?
Did I misunderstand? Did you say that would be Monday? Or
We
not?
can go live with this as soon. Steve, you want to address
Actually,
that?
yeah, we're gonna kind of make it live tonight after, if everything goes and you all approve. We're gonna make, however, the frequently asked questions, we're gonna continue to work on those tomorrow and try to get those out Monday. And honestly, that will be a fluid part of this because The questions keep coming, and the information, kind of gets changed a little bit and slightly modified as, CDC and the World Health Organization and others gather more information. It changes some of the guidance that we get. So, the difficult part, once we open that, is going to make sure we get rid of old information and replace it with the current information. And again, it's constantly changing. I think everybody was hopeful that at some point it would balance, and that's not been the case. If you've listened to the numbers over the last couple of days, they're still going. And our guidance changes a little bit each week. An example would be from a few weeks ago that it was one person per seat, and then the following week it was, students wear masks, they're okay. So again, all of that is type of guidance that we're going to try to modify and keep updated moving forward. But we're going to kind of release this tonight. However, the frequently asked question piece has not been finalized to make public, and that's why it says coming soon. But the goal is at the latest to have that on Monday.
Thank you. And we're going to start contacting families to try to get a gauge of how many people we think are coming in class and how many will be virtual, so that we can make our preparations. And that'll start Monday.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Selinsky. Mr. Jackson with Maintenance and Facilities.
Yes, good evening. We have been installing water bottle filling stations in the schools. We're going to have a minimum of 2 in each school. For that, we'll be shutting off the bubbler portion of the regular drinking fountains and just having water bottle filling stations. General maintenance in classrooms, in hallways, as we can get in there as the custodians are waxing the floors. But anything, prep work, lights, anything like that that needs to be done before teachers come back, we've been working on. Mowing, of course. And then I just wanted to, I don't know if you guys have driven by, but the Hendron roof project is going very well. They've well over half done already, and it looks really good. I haven't had
great.
much deck work to replace, so that project's going very well.
Good weather for it, too.
Absolutely, other than being hot. But they're still out there. They haven't quit. Any questions?
I have a quick question. This may be for maybe John or you, Mr. Jackson. The bus garage, when is that going to be closed out?
I'll contact Holly tomorrow and see when she'll have her BG4 portion done, and then we can do our BG5
Okay.
After that. But
Thank
I'll
you.
contact her.
Thank
But I
you.
know they were having some issues that they were buttoning up still. I think that's why it hasn't been closed out yet, but I'll check and see if that's all done.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Taylor, just to kind of go along with the bus garage BG process. Last week, there was, some brown residue in the water at the bus garage. So we're still kind of working through some things, and so we had to have that tested, and it turned out that it was just left over from when they flushed and connected the middle school water lines. So there's still some of those. Because of the middle school project, it won't be quite as rapid as it normally would be, because there are some pieces connected. But so, if you heard that, the water was tested, it's clean. There were no issues with it, other than it was just, something that you would normally, if it was at your home, have a boil order watch on. So that's kind of why that's still kind of out there, because we want to make sure we don't close it out and there be some of those things that pop up that just exist with new construction. So, we're excited about it. It's, a nice addition. It's going to make our maintenance, our bus garage a lot more efficient. And if you've not had a chance to go by and look at it, if you want, I'll be happy to meet you all out there to walk you through, because it's impressive. It's impressive. And if we can, and it's air conditioned, so it's not like you're going to be taking a tour through the middle school where it's 100 and something degree heat index, but again, it's there, but that's why it's not been closed out just yet with that. A couple other items I just want to kind of update the board with. If you all were generous and, we brought to you an option of a COVID stipend for those essential workers back when this pandemic initially set in. And we have had a total of 251 of our employees who have submitted, their requests for that stipend. And it was a total of $67,800. We had 192 employees qualify for the 300, 43 qualify for the 200, and 16 qualify for the 100. So, we were excited to be able to do that. But more importantly, it was great that, our employees were wanting to step up and serve our community in such a capacity. And, again, I think it's a great gesture on your all's behalf to recognize that. And we encourage the employees to make sure they turn that in. I mean, it's about, them. And some of them were scared. But yet they still showed up to work every day because they knew that's what was best for our students in our community, to make sure they could be fed and the areas were sanitized and clean, and we were able to function properly through those things. Also, a little bit later, the addendum this evening. With reopening plans, there's several issues, and a lot of what we talked about last Thursday focused on, students and logistics. But, a topic that has been out there for several weeks that Ms. DeJarna and I have seek guidance on from the state level, both the retirement system and KDE, and we've never been able to get a solid answer. But being proactive, she worked with KSBA and Butch to come up with the addendum we'll talk about with the sick day. And what that is COVID specific, and it will grant, and Mr. Jarner will talk about this more a little bit later, it'll grant us the ability to provide employees those days without them counting against their allocated days. There will be some, steps they will have to go through to verify. But, one of the issues that, realistically we understand is sometimes people will be quarantined or may possibly be quarantined due to something completely outside their circumstances. And, the last thing we want to do is punish someone for serving our kids, for doing what's right. So this addendum will help us do that. And again, we may get some relief and some guidance down the road, but at this time we don't have it, and we would like to be ahead of the game. So again, that's the purpose of that addendum a little bit later that I just want to make sure I share with you all. And much like many, we've been heavily focused on, trying to stay abreast of the information as it changes, continue to work on plans and communicate those things out in a timely manner. But one thing with that, I told a lot of people early on to enjoy June because July will be hectic. And there were some that started pushing out information in June that they've had to, wait, we're offline. We'll make sure, since we're streaming it. Wonderful world of technology. I know it was going on. I just had to write down my thoughts so I didn't lose my train right there, like I'm chasing squirrels. Check. Check. Test 1, 2. So we're back live? Oh, great, thanks. What I was saying was, a lot of information was kind of sent out in June, and again, given the pattern that it was going, we knew it was going to change. And, what I didn't want to do is give out misinformation or information that we knew was going to change and cause additional stress on multiple levels. But as we're getting closer and closer, now's the time that we have to really roll out the information. And with the pushback at the start of school, that puts us about right at 5 weeks away from the start. So, we're going to start getting more and more information rolling forward instead of, having to backtrack and give correct misinformation or information that has changed. Misinformation is probably not the right word. But, we know even moving forward, we have to try to be fluid. And I've had several conversations and met with principals and counselors and the district leadership team, and, we'll be discussing with teachers. We're going to have a slight shift of mindset in moving forward and getting through this. We're social and emotional well-being is going to have to kind of go to the forefront in moving forward with this. The dedication of our staff and our faculty to the education of our students will naturally take care of itself. But, there's going to be some that, want to provide every minute of instruction, but in order for us to come back in person, we're going to have to shift some extra time on good, health care, proper hygiene. With the little ones, we may have to take some extra time to teach them how to put on a mask and remind them, and the important word is remind, not punish, how important it is to keep the mask forward. And, speaking of the mask, I know that's a very divisive topic, and, we're aware of that. However, we have to go on guidance provided by the state and the public health, and also just on statistics. And one of the big statistics that's out there is that if, 2 people are wearing masks, the transmission probability is 1.5%, giving everything else is sanitized and disinfected to the level it should be. And we're going to do everything we can to possibly do that. However, we also recognize that there's going to be some in our community who want to provide instruction for their children at home. And I feel like we have an obligation for that, and that's why, one, we're looking at some other online platforms. We're providing professional development for staff on what that may look like, and it may be uncharted. We may try some things that we have to modify and try again. However, we want to recognize that we know there's some parents, some students who are going to have anxiety. We need to try to alleviate, and we're going to provide that option for them to virtual distance learn. I've pretty much quit using the term NTI. That has a negative connotation. So, when we talk about virtual distance learning, that is about new instruction, whereas NTI for us was about review and getting through the onset of a pandemic. But, it's going to be a new day, so there's going to be a slight shift of mindset that we're going to have to work through and encourage and support one another. Because again, this is about community. It is about our students, and to some degree, it's about our future. But we're going to do everything we can to be good stewards to our community, to our students, and to our staff. So, and a lot of that goes into the plan. And we recognize that not everybody's going to like it. Not everybody likes COVID. I can speak to it. You know, I can say personally, I do not like wearing a mask. However, I do believe that it's what is best for us to get back to having students in our buildings, because I dislike that even more than having to wear a mask. You know, come August 24th, I hope, and our plan is to have kids in our building. Unfortunately, it will not be 100%, because there's going to be some that want to virtually teach their children. And we have to respect that. We have to work with that. And again, that in and of itself is a shift for public education in Kentucky that we have to recognize. And we're going to continue to work forward through that. That's going to be the focus of this district for the next 5 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. School board report, anybody have anything they'd like to share at this time? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Everyone's had a chance to look at the consent agenda. Anybody have any questions or anything they would like to pull out or discuss? Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
Motion made.
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is passed. Letter B, McCracken County Board of Education Policy Manual Update 2020. Mr. Bowen.
Good evening, members of the board, and Superintendent Carter. Tonight, we are having our annual update for our summer update from the 2020 General Assembly. And tonight is our second reading in which we could take action on. So last month, I explained each one of those in detail. Tonight, I'm just going to hit the highlights. If anyone has any questions, we can certainly visit any individual policy. So in the highlights in this year's update is going to be the training requirements for board members upon a charter school application submitted. SRO positions a little more clearly defined, now requires that all SROs carry a firearm per the KRS. Several policies have adapted language on background checks to shift from substantiated findings to administrative findings in social services cases in hiring employees. There is a funding mechanism of the National Board Stipend, removal of the 89-90 hiring date exception of employees in which their spouse is a principal, updated background checks on transportation employees with the clearinghouse that's managed by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, management of activity funds based on Red Book policy guides as well. There are changes to the home hospital instructional model in the KRS in regards to who has the authority to order home hospital and also how to instructions delivered. KRS now also allows districts to establish a diploma track for individuals over 21 years old. The requirements of hotline numbers, national hotline numbers on student IDs, permission to the superintendent to determine staffing beyond the board-adopted model based on school improvement plans, identified needs, and student enrollment, and the scale for holiday pay for employees hired after the contractual days have started, along with sick bank leave as it pertains to a break in service within a specified time. Bereavement policy now includes step-parents and an inventory of fixed assets required anything above the value of $5,000 or more. So that's the highlights of the specifics in which we presented last month. So are there any questions regarding any of those specifically?
No, sir. Thank you. What's the superintendent's recommendation?
The superintendent recommends approving the updates to the policy manual as presented.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion and a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed. Letter C, COVID planned school year 2021. Mr. Bowen.
Great, thank you. So Mr. Soklinski, obviously, or he had just proposed or displayed the roadmap back to school that Ms. Jones has been working on for our website to go live. Last Thursday, we met in a work session to try to unveil this. We met with principals as well on Tuesday to unveil all to our principals, assistant principals, guidance counselors to begin to understand what the guidance we've had, how we have filtered that, and to try to operate our school district at the maximum capacity that's permitted by Kentucky Public Health, local purchase district health, along with the office of the governor. And so we also stated last week and tried to convey to the board, also to our administration, this is an enormous task, and it's an enormous responsibility that we have in protection of the public. And so it is our duty to the public to try to get back to normal as much as we can. Obviously, we know the new norm is going to be very different than what we saw whenever students attended on March the 13th. So backing up to that as well, we respect that, we understand that, and we have built a plan that we feel meets all of those things to try to get our society and our community moving forward and trying to regain some momentum. And so, as you recall, in those board plans, I'm not going to go back through that extensive meeting that we discussed, but I want to reiterate some of the things that we have in that plan. Everything from an amended school calendar to a new bell schedule to visitors and students, how they will enter into our school building, understanding that our number one priority when we get students back is to focus on their social and emotional well-being and where they're at and what type of resources we can connect kids, all the way to our transportation, how we're going to load a bus and how we're going to sanitize and disinfect our buses. Our district health services, our school nurses have an enormous responsibility of monitoring students' health, monitoring staff health, making recommendations, and trying to quarantine and separate those, along with the education piece that goes with the school nurses. We've also talked about, Mr. Jackson alluded to the fact that we've shifted to water bottle filling stations in the facilities, to how we're going to clean these facilities with our environmental services. All the variations with signage that we're going to put in our facilities as well. All of those things have been considered. All of those things are in the works, down to our food services, how we are going to feed students based upon the percentage of students that decide to go virtual, based on the students that are going to be in our traditional instructional model. It is our goal that we will provide every student with at least one hot meal a day. That is our goal. And so how are we going to disinfect those tables to try to mitigate any spread of the corona? And so within that also was an instructional model that focused on 3 different plans for blended learning. It is our goal to educate students and have in our building at the fullest capacity that is provided by those organizations that I mentioned just a bit ago. So our first plan is to start school back on August 24th with as many students that parents would like to return them. When social distancing is not obtainable, they will be required to wear a mask in K through 12 levels. And so at that point, we also are going to give parents that option of virtual learning that KDE has allowed and afforded us to do. And so in that virtual model, we are going to be reaching out to all of our parents to tell us, based on those FAQs, giving them as much information to make the best decision for their family, whether that be for any kind of anxiety or concerns or health related, what is best for their child in terms of the learning model that we're providing. We also are asking as well to be able to transition based on public health, orders of the governor, local public health, maybe even down to the concerns of a classroom specifically honed in through contact tracing, to be able to shift students in and out of a virtual, in-person, percentages, full capacity, all the way down into the NTI model that we had shown in late spring based off of those recommendations. We've also showed you the content gaps that we're going to be looking at, the work that the teachers are doing about the content that students missed in the last quarter, how that's going to be spiraled into the content and delivered to our students to try to close those gaps, achieve anything that they did miss last school year, assessing those students and making those determinations. And so we've also taken a look at all of these digital platforms, and we've evaluated and assessed the digital platforms in which we use in Google Classroom, and we've improved our training, and we've trained more teachers with Google Classroom to be able to go to a digital platform. We've adopted the Edgenuity digital curriculum for 6 through 12. I know there's variations of digital model or curriculums that they're looking at for K-5 education as well. And so they're not just knee-jerk and trying to grab the first one that they come across with a vendor. They're putting a lot of thought into how can we take that, spiral it with the missed gaps, reinforce things with students, provide them any interventions that we need, even from a virtual standpoint. And so we have also asked for an amended calendar to the variable student instructional calendar to provide our staff additional training days to be able to wrap their brains around this, to be able to work together in a professional learning community, to be able to provide the best instructions for our students, whether, again, we have a small portion of students on virtual with a large portion in traditional in-person, whether we have to go to a blended model where it's a rotational basis with specific percentages at home or in person, rotating those on best instructional practices, all the way down to how are we going to change based off the feedback the parents have given us from the NTI model that we implemented in the spring when we had to do it on about a 24-hour notice. What was the feedback that we received got from parents on that, and how are we going to make those changes? So the main focal points of this plan, even though we've done all of these things, we'll continue to adapt as we see fit. The main focal points that we're asking the board tonight for approval in that plan is amending the school calendar. We're asking that we go to a variable instructional calendar. It would reduce us from the original calendar from 176 days down to 167 days, which will be a 170-day equivalency for staff and contractual purposes and retirement purposes. But we are asking for that. That will allow us those planning days, those 6 planning days with staff along with their professional development days as well, an opening day, to prepare for students to be back in the building. It would also shift our final day from May 18th to May 21st to give us the 167 days. And so by presenting that calendar, it does eliminate us from the 170-day requirement that's set forth in KRS. We would still fulfill the 1,062 hours that's part of that variable instructional calendar. And so in saying that, it provides us with that. It provides us more time for training and prepare for students. But it also, in the event that everything shuts down, we could adjust our calendar as we see fit for NTI on that as well. And so, in a nutshell, for people to understand from our original calendar and plans that people make for holidays and travel, we're asking the board and requesting the board to consider moving the first day for students from August 6th to August 24th, the final day from May 18th to May 21st, and all breaks remain the same. Every break that was built and every day that was planned to be off would hold steady. It would just shift the first day and the last day. In doing that, we would need to get to 385 instructional minutes in all of our school buildings. Knowing the plan that we had presented last Thursday, we also presented the fact that we're going to need all hands on deck to be able to do temperature checks and comply with all of the public health requirements and the healthy at school recommendations from the Kentucky Department of Education. And so doing that, we are very, very limited on staff based on the contractual hours that the high school attends and the instructional minutes that they currently have. And so we have worked to make some modifications and make recommendations in terms of our bell schedule to allow for us to shift our transportation where we would not have to require to employ any more school bus drivers based on the current numbers. And so the significant shifts, and we've worked very closely with those principals of the 3 schools that will have the most significant shift, and that will be to our 2 intermediate schools along with our high school. And so our high school would shift to an earlier start, and our intermediate would shift to a little bit later start and then adjust. That will put all of our middle school and high school on the exact same start and end time. It will put all of our both of our intermediate schools on the same start and end time, and all of our elementary schools across the district on the same start and end time as well, and achieve the 385 instructional minutes to get to the 1,062 that we're required to have for compliance with the calendar statute. And so the third thing that we would be asking as well is to consider the blended models that we've proposed, the A, the B, and the C. We got very creative, as we said, into naming those. And so those are the three models. It is basically, and again, in review, it would be full capacity in which parents would like to return their students, and they could have the option at any point to opt out or opt back in. We would do a process in which parents would have the option to be able to appeal to the school to change what method, instructional delivery method that they had chosen. The second option would be is if we had to go down to a rated capacity, whether that be 50%, 25%. If it got to the point where it said you must social distance with mask, we would have to reduce the capacity. And the last model would be is if they did exactly what they did, short notice, you must return to the non-traditional instructional plan, which again, we're referring to as virtual because we have taken what the parents have recommended, taken the teachers' recommendations, our observations, and we have modified that plan to try to maximize our instructional practices now that we've had some time to be able to evaluate that and amend those things as well. So that last piece would allow the district office to not have to reconvene the board to be able to facilitate in and out and transition in and out of each one of those plans to be able to meet those public health requirements. So again, the plan you've seen was proposed. The plan in general, the major things would be that blended instructional model along with our modified bell schedule. Once we establish the bell schedule, if approved, then the site bases would work within that bell schedule to establish student schedules and then amend the school calendar to a variable instructional calendar for 2021. Any questions in regards to that plan or feedback from our work session that we had last Thursday?
I do have a question.
Okay.
I feel like the biggest challenge that most people that would have, I guess, a problem with it would be the middle school and the high school start times being the same. And so for parents that, take the kids to school and drop them off. So I guess so people know like what thought is being put into that where it is a big conflict to where somebody that's not riding the bus get them there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we did was, in preparation for this, in the work session, was we looked at every variation. What would it look like to transport intermediate high school? What would it look like to transport, elementary and middle at the same time? And we ran every single scenario based off of our transportation codes and the number of students that ride the bus, the number of routes, the number of drivers, the number of buses available. And we have looked at each and every one of those models. And how long does it take? What's the longest bus route? What's the shortest bus route? And so by doing that, we had come to the conclusion that the most economical and the way that we could achieve any type of modification with all hands on deck would be to transport middle and high at the same time. Even though they're on separate buses, they would have the same start times. Also, to move the intermediate, allow for a little bit of drop-off and pickup time in the afternoon and account for that. And so after the board work session, we said, okay, let's go back to the drawing board in that major concern. What would it look like even if we backed up the high school or the middle school 10 minutes? What would that look like and what would it do to us? And at that point, it just wasn't feasible to be able to transport the high school kids because those drivers, like in the Reedland area, they're the furthest ones back, right? They have the furthest way back to their next pickup for elementary and intermediate. And if we did that with the middle school, they are the closest, right? They're the closest. They're already in their attendance zones. And so when they're in their attendance zones already and they drop those middle school kids, we need to send the middle school drivers out to do the longest routes that it's going to take for the intermediate and elementary. The high school drivers that will drop at the high school will get the shortest routes. And so by mixing those routes, it was then going to start moving our elementary times by 15, possibly minutes, 15, 20 minutes, where now elementaries wouldn't be starting till 8:45, possibly close to 9 o'clock based on those routes, and then not getting out of school till 3:45 to 4 o'clock to get the 385 instructional minutes. So we've even looked just at that 10-minute time slot. And we think it's very important that a bus arrive to pick up a child when they're supposed to pick up. And so if they get delayed by another school by not being able to get out of the parking lot and getting through traffic lights. Transportation has to be able to guarantee us that bus arrives when it's supposed to, so that child arrives home at a routine time every single afternoon when that parent knows and doesn't get concerned that bus route is still out. And so one of the concerns also was the fact that there could be intermediate school age kids or elementary kids that are not home and that they're catching the bus earlier. And then these younger students have to have someone to take care of them until they get on a bus. The flip side of that is that they will be home to take care of those siblings in the afternoon. So you're going to grab one or the other. And so for safety purposes, for economic purposes, for efficiency, getting high school students off the bus, nearly an hour and a half, possibly less a day, we thought that this was the best model. And again, we took a really strong look just this past week in rerouting, taking a look, and seeing what the impact it was going to have. Just didn't feel like at that point we could give that guaranteed arrival time on that bus to and from school every day, and then stay within our 385 instructional minutes.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Bowen? I hear none. Mr. Carter, your recommendation.
The superintendent recommends approving the COVID-19 school plan for the 2021 school year that includes an amended calendar, adjusted start and end times, and 3 plans that include traditional instruction, rotation of traditional and virtual instruction, and complete virtual.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
As we move through this, with some of the people who drop students off with that intermediate, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to lean in. Is there a way to work with those parents who are dropping off students, say at the intermediate school and then the middle school? Because I think there's a 40-minute time span there.
We are in the plans of that. There are some things that we're having to take a look at. For example, Reland Intermediate already has a 21st century program. They can operate a program in the morning. Those students, even if they need to get on the middle school bus, can ride in with them to get there even earlier to accommodate parents. That is one option that they're going to be able to open that up. And Mr. Thomas is working diligently to try to prepare for that 21st century grant program. The other side of that is Lone Oak Intermediate, who doesn't have 21st century grant program, but they do have an afternoon after-school program that they're going to be working with that coordinator to try to set up that morning program as well. And so Mr. Maviano is very, very aware of that time difference. Mr. Maviano is also aware that 4th and 5th grade students, parents may not feel comfortable leaving them home to catch a bus. And so he is working very diligently as well. The 2 schools, I can't say exactly how they're going to land. I do know that we've been in extensive conversations with them, and that is their number one concern with shifting that time a little bit later, and they're finding that best possible solution. We do believe we're going to have a solution for parents to specifically is exactly what that is, who's going to sponsor it, the time slots for both of those. That's still in a little bit of discussion.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any discussion topics or questions for Mr. Bowen? So I've got one. So the busing, can you go over that and just explain about what you guys have come up with as far as students in the high school, students in the middle school, the intermediate, and the elementary school?
Sure, absolutely. So traditionally, since the high school has been created, we've transported 3 levels every morning. We have transported the intermediate students, we've transported the middle school students, and the high school students in conjunction with one another. In the afternoons, what we do is we transport middle school and intermediate students at home, okay? And then we transport the high school and elementary in conjunction with one another in the afternoon. So by shifting transportation, we're going to transport fewer students in the morning on each one of those routes. And so by transporting fewer students on those routes, we're going to be able to distance those kids. So that's one of the health things that we're going to have. We're also no longer going to have to, in this plan, to have a shuttle bus where a high school student potentially is getting on the bus at just after 6 o'clock in the morning, run the full route, come to Reedland Middle School, Lone Oak Middle School, Heath Middle School, transition on a bus to get on a shuttle bus for that bus to transport them to the high school for class to not start till 7:50. So we believe that high school students not only are going to be a lot shorter on the bus ride, but they're going to potentially be picked up a little bit later than what they typically would. And so reversing that as well would mean that only high school students. This would allow us to have all age-appropriate peers on a bus with one another at any given time. Only high school kids will be on a bus together, picked up at their home, transported directly to the high school, no more shuttle systems. We will also have we will have a stop on the bus routes. If a parent doesn't want their child to drive all the way to the high school, they could drive their vehicle, drop their child at the middle school, and we would have that as another one of our bus stops. It wouldn't be a shuttle, it's just going to be a bus stop. And a bus that comes directly by the school can swing in there and pick the students up. That will apply to all 3 of our current middle schools and attendance zones. And so that's going to allow us to be able to transport just high school students. Only middle school, again, age-appropriate peers will be on that bus together. And then we would transport kindergarten through 5th grade to be able to do that. We've even gotten down to the point that we're looking at the intermediate being the ones that are let out first, and start first and let out first, because they will be more efficient in loading the buses to guarantee that bus to get to the elementary school on time, to be able to put the kid on the bus and then get them home safely at that appropriate time at a very consistent time period every day.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Anybody else have anything? Mr. Carter, superintendent's recommendation.
You've already got.
You've already got the
Already got the
recommendation.
recommendation.
Do I have a motion to approve Mr.
We've
Carter's?
got a motion and a second.
Okay.
Waiting on vote, Mr. Vote.
All in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to letter D, laptop fee and charges. Mr. Slingsky.
Yes, thank you for this addendum. Since about 2008, we've had a laptop program that existed in our high schools. At that time, Lone Oak, Reedland, and Heath. And we have carried that on through now at McCracken County High School. And with that, we typically charge a laptop user fee. Now it's $30. As we move into a one-to-one program into our middle schools, and at some point, maybe sending laptops home with our elementary school students, we again, you all as a board approve school fees. And so I'm coming to you tonight to consider continuing the $30 user fee that is paid in our high schools in our middle school as well for those parents and families that are going to be involved in this initiative, and even into our elementary schools if they are sending laptops home with kids to do virtual instruction, that will be a consistent fee throughout the district, K-12, $30 user fee, which will go to, it's more like an insurance consortium. Parents will have some skin in the game to take care of it. It will cover some incidentals, and then also allow us just to update when necessary. So I'm coming to you tonight to ask that we continue the $30 laptop user fee into our middle schools and elementary schools.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Slingsky?
I do. Will there be any type of assistance for families that aren't able to pay the $30?
Yeah, typically as a former high school principal, those parents could petition me, and we would typically work out a payment plan. So whatever they could do, $5 a month for the next 6 months. We're not gonna allow them to not have access to a computer.
Okay.
Most often, but prior to COVID, we have day users at the high school. And so out of 2,000, you might have 40 or 50 students that don't take the computer home. So that's another thing that you need to know about this, is that they don't have to pay the fee, but the computer doesn't go home with them. It's turned in every day. They pick it up in the morning and turn it back in the afternoon. In a situation where we go virtual, that's probably not going to be, probably can't happen unless they have a computer in their home. So yes, there's a couple ways to skin that cat.
Okay.
But we typically will try to work out some type of a payment plan for those families that can't.
Okay, well,
Yes.
even if we could have the principals kind of think through something to have a plan in place, something where they could still sign something and be held accountable, but, and given assistance by somebody else if they can't do it at all.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Soklinski? Superintendent's recommendation.
Superintendent recommends the approval of laptop fees and charges.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion and the second. All in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. Soklinski. Letter E, resolution to grant additional sick leave for COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Jordan.
Okay, thank you. Since March of this year, we have been navigating the ever-changing world of the COVID-19 pandemic. We get different guidance all the time from federal, state, and local officials. And one thing that the board had flexibility in through June 30th of this year was to have the ability to grant additional emergency leave days to our employees as a result of the pandemic. That was done through a Senate Bill 177, and that expired June 30th. We also have some relief from the federal government. They have provided some expanded options for FMLA leave for employees, but those options expire on December 31st of this year, as it stands right now. So to be responsive to this health crisis and to be supportive of our employees and to relieve employee concerns about how dealing with the effects of the pandemic on a personal level will affect them, if people have to take leave time of their own for an extended amount of time, it could result ultimately in loss of money on a paycheck, loss of health insurance. That's a whole other health crisis for people. So to be responsive to that, we've explored some options that the district can do legally within the parameters of statutes and policies already in place and provide some help to our employees. So we have worked to develop a resolution to address these needs. And if it's okay, I'd like to read that to you for your approval. McCracken County Board of Education Policies 03.1232 and 03.2232 provide full-time certified and classified employees 10 sick days of leave with pay each school year. Certified and classified employees with less than a full year contract receive a prorated part of the authorized sick leave days calculated to the nearest half day. Due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, employees find themselves subject to isolation and quarantine orders. These orders may prevent employees from being allowed to work for periods of up to 14 calendar days or more, depending on their diagnosis, symptoms, risk of transmitting the contagious disease, and ever-changing guidance from federal, state, and local health officials. A person may be subject to such an order more than once. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic and within the parameters of the Kentucky Revised Statute 161.155 and McCracken County Board of Education Policies 03.1232 and 03.2232, be it resolved that, with approval by the superintendent and assistant superintendent for personnel and administration, additional sick leave may be granted to employees on a day-by-day basis for full-time or full-year contract certified and classified employees as needed for the following reasons related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Number one, the employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. 2, the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine because of COVID-19. 3, the employee is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and is seeking a medical diagnosis. 4, the employee is caring for a member of the immediate family subject to or advised to quarantine as described above. Or 5, the employee is experiencing another substantially similar condition specified by the Secretary of Health and Human Services in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury and the Secretary of Labor. Persons employed on a full-year contract but scheduled for less than a full workday shall receive the authorized sick leave days equivalent to their normal working day. This resolution is to be adopted in response of the COVID-19 pandemic by the McCracken County Board of Education on this, the 16th day of July, 2020. Do you all have any questions about this?
No limits and no idea what it would cost.
Right, right. Now, one aspect of this is that we understand through information we have from FEMA that paid leave for employees in response to this pandemic could be subject to reimbursement through FEMA. We don't yet know exactly what that looks like. The way this is written gives us some flexibility to offer leave to employees as they need it for this crisis, but also flexibility for the district to maximize whatever funding and reimbursement options we may have from FEMA.
And we would require some documentation as well as part of this process. That's why, if you notice in the resolution, it says both, Mr. Jarnett and I would both be signing that. So, I mean, there would be conversation on each one, case-by-case basis. And, you know, information would have to be provided in relation to that. Because, again, there's just so many different circumstances surrounding this that we're trying to, again, get ahead. You know, if somebody goes out of state and it has to do that, that is different than a teacher who is ordered to quarantine because a student in their class. So, again, we will have to navigate through that as we move forward, but this resolution will give us that flexibility and ability to do so, not only moving forward and not wait on some other guidance that may or may not come. And one thing I would say is this board has always taken great pride in doing what's best for its staff and the students. And this is, I truly believe, one of those instances that we're putting something in place to help alleviate really some unneeded stress at this time for our staff.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm assuming that y'all will go through this with the employees during one of those PD days and how to.
We will make sure the word gets out to our
Yes.
employees, yes.
So, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Anybody else have anything for Mr. Jarnett? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Carter, recommendation, please.
The superintendent recommends that the board adopt the resolution to grant additional sick leave for the COVID-19 pandemic.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor by aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is passed. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the orders of the treasurer?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Orders of the treasurer passed. I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor by aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.